Sarah Mitchell had been working at Metro General Hospital for only 3 months when the ambulance sirens pierced through the quiet Tuesday evening. She was still getting used to the chaos of the emergency department, her hands sometimes shaking as she drew blood or inserted IVs. The other nurses had been kind but firm in their guidance, reminding her that hesitation could cost lives. The emergency room doors burst open, and paramedics rushed in wheeling a stretcher. Sarah's supervisor, head nurse Patricia Williams, immediately took charge. The patient was a man in his early 30s, unconscious and covered in blood-soaked bandages. What shocked Sarah most was the sheer number of wounds across his body. Multiple gunshot wounds, 20 entry points confirmed. The lead paramedic shouted over the noise. Patient has been stabilized but lost significant blood. BP is dropping fast. Dr. Martinez, the attending physician, quickly examined the patient. Sarah watched in amazement as he systematically checked each wound location. The injuries were spread across the man's arms, legs, torso, and shoulder. Despite the severity, the patient's vital signs suggested he was fighting hard to survive. "This is unlike anything I've seen in 15 years, Doctor," Martinez muttered to Patricia. "The pattern of these wounds, the locations, it's almost like he was deliberately targeted, but somehow managed to avoid fatal hits." Sarah was assigned to assist with the initial treatment. Her hands steadied as she helped clean and dress the wounds. The patient had no identification, no wallet, no personal belongings except for a simple chain around his neck with dog tags that had been too damaged to read clearly. As they worked, Sarah noticed something unusual about the patient's physical condition. Despite the traumatic injuries, his muscle tone and conditioning were extraordinary. His hands were calloused in specific patterns, and there were faded scars on his body that suggested this wasn't his first encounter with violence. "Look at his hands," Sarah whispered to Patricia during a brief moment. "These aren't ordinary calluses. And see how his breathing remains controlled even while unconscious?" Patricia nodded grimly. "I've seen similar conditioning before. My husband was military. This man has had extensive combat training. The surgery took 6 hours." Dr. Martinez and his team worked methodically to remove bullets, repair damaged tissue, and stop internal bleeding. Sarah assisted throughout, learning more in one night than she had in weeks of regular shifts. The patient's resilience was remarkable. Several times his vitals dropped dangerously low, only to stabilize again, as if his body refused to give up. During the operation, Sarah noticed that some of the bullets had unusual markings. Dr. Martinez carefully preserved each one, placing them in separate containers for the police report that would inevitably follow. Hospital protocol required law enforcement notification for all gunshot victims. "The bullet trajectories are strange, Doctor," Martinez observed. "Some came from above, others from ground level. This wasn't a simple shooting. It was like he was caught in crossfire from multiple directions." As dawn approached, the patient was finally stable enough to be moved to intensive care. Sarah volunteered to stay for the extended shift to monitor him. She felt oddly protective of this mysterious man who had fought so hard to survive. In the ICU, Sarah sat beside the patient's bed, checking his vitals every 15 minutes. His face was peaceful despite the trauma his body had endured. There was something about him that seemed familiar, though she couldn't place why. His facial features were sharp and defined, with a strong jawline and what appeared to be a small scar above his left eyebrow. Around noon, the patient began showing signs of consciousness. His eyes moved beneath closed lids, and his fingers twitched slightly. Sarah immediately called Dr. Martinez, who arrived within minutes to assess the patient's neurological responses. "Can you hear me?" Dr. Martinez asked gently. "You're in Metro General Hospital. You've been injured, but you're safe now." The patient's eyes slowly opened, revealing sharp blue irises that immediately scanned the room with tactical precision. Even in his weakened state, Sarah could see the alertness and intelligence behind those eyes. This was not an ordinary person. "Where?" The patient's voice was hoarse and barely audible. "You're in the hospital," Sarah said softly, moving closer to his bedside. "You were brought in with multiple gunshot wounds. Do you remember what happened?" The patient's eyes focused on Sarah's face, studying her carefully. For a moment, something like gratitude flickered across his expression. Then his gaze hardened, as if he was remembering something important. "I need to make a phone call," he whispered urgently. Dr. Martinez stepped forward. "Sir, you need to rest. The police will want to speak with you about what happened, but first we need to ensure you're stable. You've lost a lot of blood and underwent extensive surgery." The patient tried to sit up, but winced in pain. Sarah gently placed her hand on his shoulder. "Please, you need to stay calm. Your body needs time to heal." "You don't understand," the patient said, his voice growing stronger despite his obvious pain. "There are people who need to know I'm alive, and there are others who cannot know where I am." His words sent a chill through Sarah. She exchanged glances with Dr. Martinez, who seemed equally concerned by the cryptic statement. The patient's military bearing was becoming more apparent as consciousness returned. Throughout the afternoon, Sarah continued her careful monitoring. The patient drifted in and out of sleep, but whenever he was awake, his eyes constantly surveyed the room. He asked about hospital security, exit locations, and whether anyone had come looking for him. His questions were too specific and tactical to be casual concerns. As evening approached, Sarah was preparing to end her double shift when she noticed something that made her blood run cold. Through the ICU window, she saw 3 men in dark suits walking purposefully through the hospital corridor. They weren't dressed like doctors, and their manner suggested official business of a serious nature. The patient must have sensed her tension, because his eyes snapped open immediately. "What is it?" he asked, his voice suddenly alert and clear. Sarah moved to the window and peered out carefully. There are men in suits, asking questions at the nurse's station. They're showing badges to Patricia. The patient's jaw tightened. "How long have I been here?" "About 18 hours since you were brought in." He closed his eyes and seemed to be calculating something. "They found me faster than expected." He looked directly at Sarah with an intensity that made her feel like he was seeing right through her. "Nurse, what's your name?" "Sarah Mitchell." "Sarah, in the next few minutes, some federal agents are going to come through that door. They're going to ask you detailed questions about everything I've said and done since I've been conscious. Your answers could determine whether I live or die." Sarah's heart pounded as she processed the patient's words. Before she could respond, the ICU doors opened, and 3 men in dark suits entered, followed by Patricia and Dr. Martinez. The men moved with the same controlled precision she had observed in her patient, but their presence felt threatening rather than protective. "FBI," the lead agent announced, showing his badge to Sarah. "Agent Thompson, we need to speak with the patient and anyone who has had contact with him." Sarah looked at her patient, whose eyes had closed again, feigning unconsciousness. His breathing had become slow and regular, but she could see the tension in his jaw. Agent Thompson approached the bed and studied the man's face carefully. "When did he regain consciousness?" Agent Thompson asked Sarah directly. Sarah felt the weight of her patient's earlier warning. Something told her to be careful with her answer. "He's been drifting in and out," she said truthfully. "Mostly unconscious due to the trauma and medication." Agent Thompson made a note. "Has he said anything? Asked any questions or made any statements?" Dr. Martinez stepped forward. "Agent Thompson, this patient has undergone extensive surgery and is still in critical condition. Any questioning needs to be brief and supervised." The second agent, who had been silent until now, moved closer to the bed. "This man is wanted in connection with a classified operation that went wrong. His condition is of national security interest." Sarah's mind raced. National security? What kind of situation had her patient been involved in that would bring the FBI to a hospital bed? "What exactly are you suggesting?" Dr. Martinez asked, his voice taking on a protective edge. "This man is my patient, and he was clearly the victim of violence." Agent Thompson exchanged glances with his colleagues. "Dr. Martinez, what we're about to tell you is classified. But given the circumstances, you need to understand the gravity of the situation. This man is Lieutenant Commander James Rodriguez, a Navy SEAL who was involved in a covert operation that was compromised. We have reason to believe there may be additional threats to his safety." Sarah's breath caught. A Navy SEAL. That explained the extraordinary physical conditioning, the tactical awareness, the survival instincts that had kept him alive through 20 gunshot wounds. She looked at the man she now knew as James Rodriguez with new understanding. The operation he was involved in targeted a domestic terrorist cell that had infiltrated several military installations, Agent Thompson continued. Rodriguez discovered evidence of the infiltration. But before he could report it through proper channels, he was ambushed. We believe the terrorists have contacts within law enforcement who helped them track him. Dr. Martinez frowned. Are you saying this hospital might not be safe? We're taking precautions. The third agent spoke for the first time. But we need to know everything Rodriguez has said since regaining consciousness. Any information he shared could help us identify the remaining threat. Sarah felt the moral complexity of her situation intensifying. Her patient, Rodriguez, had trusted her with his warning about being careful with federal agents. But if these were legitimate FBI agents trying to protect him, wasn't she obligated to cooperate? He asked about making a phone call, Sarah said carefully. He seemed concerned about letting people know he was alive, but also worried about the wrong people finding out where he was. Agent Thompson leaned forward. Did he mention any names? Any specific locations or contacts? No, Sarah replied honestly. He was still very weak and disoriented. At that moment, Rodriguez stirred and opened his eyes slowly, as if naturally waking from deep sleep. His gaze moved from Sarah to the agents, and she saw a flicker of recognition in his expression. Agent Thompson, Rodriguez said, his voice weak but clear. I should have known you'd find me eventually. Rodriguez, we need to get you to a secure medical facility, Agent Thompson said. Your cover was blown, and there are still active threats against you. Rodriguez attempted to sit up slightly, wincing with pain. How many of the cell members have you arrested? That's classified information, but I can tell you the operation is ongoing. We need your testimony about what you discovered before the ambush. Sarah watched the interaction carefully. Something felt off about the dynamics between Rodriguez and Agent Thompson. While Rodriguez seemed to know the agent, there was no warmth or trust in his expression. If anything, she detected wariness and suspicion. Rodriguez, Agent Thompson continued. We know about the evidence you gathered. The memory cards, the photographs, the documentation of the infiltration. We need to know where you hid them. For the first time since the agents arrived, Rodriguez looked directly at Sarah. In that brief glance, she saw a clear message. These were not the good guys. Her patient's jaw set firmly as he returned his attention to Agent Thompson. I don't know what you're talking about, Rodriguez said calmly. I was on leave when I was attacked. Random street crime, probably. Agent Thompson's expression hardened. Rodriguez, this isn't the time for games. American lives are at stake. The terrorist cell is planning additional attacks, and your evidence is the key to stopping them. Like I said, I don't know anything about any evidence, Rodriguez repeated. Dr. Martinez stepped between the agents and the bed. Gentlemen, this interview needs to end. My patient is showing signs of stress, and his vital signs are becoming unstable. Any further questioning will have to wait until he's stronger. Agent Thompson looked frustrated but nodded reluctantly. We'll be posting security outside this room for the patient's protection. No one enters or leaves without our authorization. After the agents left, Sarah remained with Rodriguez, checking his monitors and adjusting his IV. When she was certain they were alone, she whispered, Those weren't really FBI agents, were they? Rodriguez's eyes met hers, and he shook his head slightly. Sarah, you saved my life by not telling them everything I said earlier. But I need you to understand, you're now in danger too. By helping me, you've become a target. The weight of his words settled over her like a cold blanket. What kind of danger? The men I was investigating aren't just terrorists. They're highly placed individuals within our own government who have been selling military secrets to foreign powers. When I discovered their network, they tried to eliminate me. Sarah felt dizzy. So, those agents are part of the conspiracy. They need to find the evidence I gathered before anyone else does. And they'll do whatever it takes to get it. But why didn't you just give the evidence to the real authorities? Rodriguez's expression grew grim. Because I don't know how high up the corruption goes. The only person I trust is Admiral Sarah Chen at Naval Intelligence. And I haven't been able to contact her since the ambush. Sarah sat down heavily in the chair beside his bed. What happens now? Those fake agents are going to keep pressing for information. They might try to move me to a different location where they have more control. And they're definitely going to be watching you to see if I passed anything to you. Did you pass anything to me? I mean? Rodriguez studied her face carefully. Not yet. But I might have to, depending on how this plays out. Sarah, I know this isn't what you signed up for when you became a nurse, but you might be the only chance I have to get the truth to the right people. Through the window, Sarah could see one of the fake agents talking on his phone in the corridor. His body language suggested urgency and frustration. Dr. Martinez was at the nurses' station, having what appeared to be a heated discussion with Patricia. They're putting pressure on the hospital administration, Rodriguez observed, following her gaze. Soon they'll find a way to transfer me somewhere more isolated. What can I do? For now, just act normal. Don't let them suspect that you know anything. But Sarah, if something happens to me, if I disappear, or if they claim I've been transferred for my own safety, you need to contact Admiral Chen immediately. Rodriguez carefully recited a phone number, making Sarah repeat it back until she had it memorized. Tell her Broken Arrow Protocol, and that the evidence is in the lighthouse. She'll know what that means. Before Sarah could ask what lighthouse he meant, Agent Thompson returned to the room with a hospital administrator she didn't recognize. Miss Mitchell, the administrator said, we're implementing new security protocols for this patient. You'll need to be debriefed by the federal agents before continuing your duties. Sarah's pulse quickened, but she tried to remain calm. Of course. Whatever is necessary for the patient's safety. As she gathered her things, Rodriguez caught her hand briefly. To anyone watching, it would look like a patient thanking his nurse. But Sarah felt him press something small into her palm. Without looking, she slipped whatever it was into her pocket. Thank you for everything, Nurse Mitchell, Rodriguez said clearly. Your care has meant more to me than you'll ever know. Walking toward the door with Agent Thompson, Sarah felt the small object in her pocket and realized her quiet life as a rookie nurse had just become infinitely more complicated. Whatever Rodriguez had given her, she was now carrying something that powerful and dangerous people were willing to kill for. The real test of her courage was about to begin. The debriefing room was sterile and windowless, designed to make people feel isolated and vulnerable. Sarah sat across from Agent Thompson and his partner, Agent Mills, trying to keep her hands steady as they asked the same questions repeatedly in slightly different ways. Let's go through this one more time, Agent Thompson said, his voice taking on an edge of impatience. Rodriguez must have said something during his conscious moments. Even seemingly innocent comments could be crucial to national security. Sarah repeated the same carefully edited story she had told before, omitting Rodriguez's warnings and the phone number he had made her memorize. In her pocket, the small object he had pressed into her hand felt like it was burning through the fabric. She still hadn't had a chance to examine it. Miss Mitchell. Agent Mills leaned forward. We have reason to believe that Rodriguez may have hidden classified materials before his injury. He might have tried to pass something to you for safekeeping. Even something that seemed harmless could actually be extremely important. He didn't give me anything. Sarah lied, hoping her voice sounded convincing. He was barely conscious most of the time. Agent Thompson stood and walked behind her chair, a classic intimidation tactic. You understand, of course, that withholding information in a matter of national security is a federal crime. We're talking about terrorism, Miss Mitchell. American lives are at stake. Sarah felt sweat beading on her forehead but forced herself to remain calm. I understand the seriousness, Agent Thompson. If I knew anything that could help, I would tell you. The agents exchanged glances, and Sarah sensed their growing frustration. After another 30 minutes of repeated questions, they finally allowed her to leave. But not before Agent Mills handed her a business card. If you remember anything else, or if Rodriguez tries to contact you, call immediately, for your own safety as much as anything else. Sarah returned to the ICU to find Rodriguez's room empty. Patricia was at the nurse's station, looking upset. "Where is he?" Sarah asked, though she already suspected the answer. "They transferred him about an hour ago," Patricia said grimly. "Said it was for his own protection, that the hospital wasn't secure enough." Dr. Martinez fought it, but they had official paperwork. Federal orders. Sarah's heart sank. Rodriguez had been right. They had found a way to move him somewhere they had complete control. She excused herself and headed for the bathroom, finally able to examine what Rodriguez had given her. It was a small micro SD card, no bigger than her fingernail. Sarah stared at it in her palm, realizing she was holding the evidence that Rodriguez had risked his life to protect. She quickly hid it again and returned to work, trying to act normal while her mind raced. That evening, Sarah drove home to her small apartment, constantly checking her mirrors to see if she was being followed. Every car behind her seemed suspicious, every shadow potentially threatening. She had never felt so paranoid in her life. Once inside, Sarah double-locked her door and closed all the curtains before examining the micro SD card again. She knew she needed to contact Admiral Chen, but she also needed to understand what information Rodriguez had died protecting, if he was still alive. Sarah inserted the card into her laptop, her hands shaking slightly as the files loaded. What she saw made her gasp aloud. The card contained hundreds of documents, photographs, and audio recordings, financial records showing massive payments to high-ranking military officials, photos of secret meetings between American officials and foreign agents, audio recordings of conversations planning the sale of classified weapons technology. But what shocked Sarah most was seeing Agent Thompson's face in several of the photographs, clearly meeting with individuals that the documents identified as foreign intelligence operatives. The man who had claimed to be FBI was actually one of the traitors Rodriguez had been investigating. Sarah immediately understood why Rodriguez had been so careful about whom to trust. The corruption went deep, and the fake FBI agents weren't just trying to recover evidence, they were trying to eliminate anyone who could expose them. She memorized Admiral Chen's phone number again and dialed, her heart pounding as she waited for an answer. "Admiral Chen's office," a professional voice answered. "I need to speak with Admiral Chen immediately. It's about Broken Arrow Protocol." There was a pause, then the voice became urgent. "Hold, please." Within seconds, a woman's voice came on the line. "My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm a nurse at Metro General Hospital. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez told me to contact you. He said to tell you the evidence is in the lighthouse." Another pause. Then Admiral Chen spoke rapidly. "Miss Mitchell, where is Rodriguez now?" "They took him." Men claiming to be FBI agents. But Rodriguez said they were part of the conspiracy. "Admiral, I have the evidence. He gave me a micro SD card with documents, photos, recordings, everything." "Listen carefully," Admiral Chen said, her voice intense. "Your life is in immediate danger. The people Rodriguez was investigating have resources within multiple agencies. Do not go home. Do not go to work. Do not contact anyone you know." "How soon can you get to the Oceanside Lighthouse on Route 14? Sarah glanced at her clock. "Maybe 2 hours if I leave now. Take only essential items and the evidence. I'll have a team waiting for you there. Trust no one in uniform unless they give you the code phrase, Blue Storm Rising. Do you understand?" "Yes, Admiral." "Miss Mitchell, what you're doing takes tremendous courage. Rodriguez risked everything to expose this conspiracy, and now you're the only one who can help us finish what he started." Sarah quickly packed a bag with essentials, constantly checking the windows for any sign of surveillance. As she prepared to leave, her phone rang. The caller ID showed the hospital number. "Sarah?" It was Dr. Martinez. "I need you to come in immediately. There's been an emergency with one of your patients." Something in his tone sounded wrong, too formal, too scripted. Sarah's instincts, sharpened by everything that had happened, told her this was a trap. "Which patient, Dr. Martinez?" "The trauma patient from yesterday." "Please come in through the staff entrance. There will be security waiting to escort you." Sarah's blood ran cold. Doctor Martinez would never refer to Rodriguez as the trauma patient. And he would never ask her to use the staff entrance for a medical emergency. Someone was making him make this call. "I'll be right there," Sarah lied, then immediately hung up and turned off her phone. She grabbed her car keys and the micro SD card, her heart pounding as she realized how close the conspiracy had come to catching her. As she headed for her car, Sarah noticed a dark sedan parked across the street with two men inside. They hadn't been there when she arrived home. Using her apartment building's back exit, Sarah made her way to her car through a series of alleyways, constantly checking to make sure she wasn't being followed. The drive to Oceanside Lighthouse felt like the longest 2 hours of her life. The lighthouse stood on a rocky cliff overlooking the ocean, its beacon cutting through the evening darkness. Sarah parked and waited, studying every shadow for potential threats. After 10 minutes, a figure emerged from behind the lighthouse building. "Blue storm rising," the man said quietly. Sarah felt a wave of relief. "You're with Admiral Chen?" "Lieutenant Colonel Hayes. Naval Intelligence. The Admiral is waiting inside." Admiral Chen was a small, sharp-eyed woman who radiated authority despite her compact stature. She examined the micro SD card with intense focus as her team of technicians downloaded and analyzed its contents. "Rodriguez did exceptional work," Admiral Chen said, after reviewing several files. "This evidence will bring down a network that has been selling American military secrets for over 3 years. We estimate they've compromised dozens of operations and caused the deaths of at least 15 undercover agents." "What about Rodriguez?" Sarah asked. "Is he still alive?" Admiral Chen's expression grew grim. "We're working on that. The facility where they claim to have taken him doesn't exist in any federal database. But Rodriguez is resourceful. If anyone can survive until we find him, it's him." Over the next several hours, Sarah provided detailed testimony about everything she had observed and experienced. The evidence on the micro SD card, combined with her eyewitness account, gave Naval Intelligence everything they needed to begin arrests. "Miss Mitchell," Admiral Chen said as dawn broke over the ocean, "what you've done tonight has saved countless American lives. The courage you showed, the risks you took. Rodriguez chose well when he trusted you." 3 weeks later, Sarah returned to work at Metro General Hospital to find the ICU buzzing with unusual activity. Patricia greeted her with a mysterious smile. "You have a visitor in room 314, Patricia said. "A patient who specifically requested you." Sarah's heart leaped as she walked to the room and saw Rodriguez sitting up in bed, still bandaged but very much alive. His eyes lit up when he saw her. "I told you I'd find a way to contact the right people," he said with a weak smile. "How did you escape?" Sarah asked, rushing to his bedside. "Who says I escaped?" Rodriguez grinned. "Maybe I was exactly where I needed to be to help Naval Intelligence complete their investigation. Sometimes the best way to catch conspirators is to let them think they've won." Sarah realized that Rodriguez's capture might not have been the disaster she thought it was. "You planned this?" "Not the 20 bullet wounds," Rodriguez said, touching his bandaged shoulder. "But, once I realized who was after me, I knew I needed to get close enough to their operation to help Admiral Chen bring them all down." Outside the window, Sarah could see news vans gathering as word of the conspiracy arrests began to spread. The rookie nurse who had been terrified for her life 3 weeks ago now felt like a different person entirely. She had discovered courage she never knew she possessed. And she had helped expose a betrayal that threatened national security. "So what happens now?" Sarah asked. Rodriguez looked at her with deep respect. "Now you go back to being a nurse, knowing that you've done something extraordinary. And maybe, if you're interested, Admiral Chen mentioned that Naval Intelligence could use someone with your skills and courage." Sarah considered the offer, looking out at the ocean where everything had changed for her. She was no longer just a rookie nurse. She was someone who had faced real danger and emerged stronger. Whatever she decided to do next, she knew she would never again underestimate her own capacity for bravery.